There is a particular kind of silence that settles over a house at 2 in the morning. Not peaceful, not restful. The kind of silence that has weight to it, that presses against the walls and sits at the foot of your bed and refuses to let you close your eyes. I know that silence well now. I have been living inside it for 11 months. My name is Eleanor Mae Simmons. I'm 71 years old. I raised my son Marcus in the house where I currently sit at the kitchen table. Except that tonight, I'm not sitting at the kitchen table because the kitchen is locked. There is a keypad on the door. I do not have the code. My son's wife changed it 3 days ago, and she did not tell me what the new one was. And when I asked Marcus about it at dinner, a dinner I had not been invited to cook, the dinner I had not been invited to eat until Brianna set a plate on the small table near the laundry room and called it, without looking at me, your spot. He told me it was for organization. Organization. I'm 71 years old. I have organized this house for 43 years. I organized it when Marcus was an infant, screaming through the night, and Raymond was working double shifts at the plant, and there was no one else. I organized it through 6 years of school lunches and 13 years of dinners, and the particular chaos of a teenage boy who left his shoes in every room except the one where shoes were supposed to go. I organized it through Raymond's illness, and through the years after Raymond, when organizing the house was the only thing that kept me from understanding, too clearly, what it meant to live alone inside rooms that still carried the shape of someone who was gone. My daughter-in-law locked my kitchen. And tonight, while she sleeps in the bedroom that used to be mine, and while my son sleeps beside her in the bed I bought with Raymond 31 years ago, I'm going to do something. Not now. Not while the house is this quiet. First, I'm going to tell you the whole story, because the woman who locked my kitchen does not know everything she should know about me. She has never thought to ask. And that is perhaps the most important thing to understand about what is coming. If this story is already finding its way under your skin, hit that like button and subscribe to Linda's Life Diaries, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. She always said the ones who stay quiet longest know the most. Let's see if that's true. Raymond Simmons died on a Tuesday in March, 4 years ago. He went the way he had lived, without making a production of it, without asking for help he did not need, in the particular quiet dignity of a man who had always done what needed doing and trusted that the people around him would do the same. The hospice nurse said he passed at 4:17 in the afternoon, with the window open and the sound of the yard coming in through the screen. We had been married 44 years. What people do not tell you about grief, what they cannot tell you, because there is no language for it that doesn't flatten it into something manageable, is that it does not follow a schedule. It does not peak at the funeral and then recede. It comes in sideways, months later, when you reach for a coffee mug and realize you've been reaching for his. When you wake at 5:30 because for 44 years that was the time his alarm went off, and your body still expects the sound, and the silence where it used to be is its own kind of presence. I'm telling you about Raymond because it matters. It matters for reasons that will become clear. But also because he is the reason I understand, down to the root of the thing, what it means to build something slowly, carefully, over decades, with your hands and your time and your trust, and what it costs when someone treats that thing as though it belongs to them by right of proximity. Raymond was not a man who spent money he did not have. He was not a man who explained his decisions unless he was asked, and he was not often asked because the results spoke clearly enough on their own. In the years we were married, he made a series of quiet investments. Property, mostly, nothing flashy. A duplex here, a small commercial building there. Things he understood. Solid things. The kind you could drive past and put your hand against the brick and know were real. He put everything in a trust. His attorney, a calm and meticulous man named Gerald Okoye, who has been my attorney since Raymond's death, helped him structure it so that the assets would pass cleanly, would be managed correctly, would not be subject to the kind of entanglement that Raymond had watched undo other men's legacies in the years he'd been paying attention. The trust transferred to me upon Raymond's death. Marcus knows his father left him provided for in other ways. A sum of money he received at 35, an education fund we established for any children he might have, the kind of parental provision that communicates love without requiring dependence. What Marcus does not know, what I have never seen fit to mention, because Raymond never mentioned it, and Raymond was a wiser person than I will ever be, is the full scope of what the trust contains. He does not know about the duplex on Alderman Street, which I have been renting to the same family for 6 years. He does not know about the commercial property on Hartley Avenue, which has 3 tenants, one of whom is the medical billing company where his wife, Brianna, has worked as an office manager for the past 4 years. He does not know that the building Brianna drives to every morning, the building where she spends her days organizing other people's accounts, where she goes on about efficiency and systems and the proper management of resources, that building has a name on the deed. That name is Eleanor Mae Simmons. She has never thought to ask who owns the building where she works. Why would she? She is an office manager, not an owner. She speaks to the property management company. She signs her lease renewals and pays her company's rent and moves through those offices every day without once considering the question of whose name makes all of it possible. I have had 11 months to think about this. I have had 11 months to decide what to do about it. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here. Let me tell you the whole shape of the thing, because the shape matters. The shape is what makes it what it is. Marcus called me in the spring of last year, 8 months after Raymond died. He was 43 then, my boy, my only child, the one I had worked every shift and missed every sleep for, the one I had watched grow from an infant who needed everything into a man who, I believed, needed nothing that wasn't already his. He sounded the way he had sounded as a teenager when he'd gotten himself into something he didn't know how to get out of, not exactly scared, but moving carefully around the edges of a thing. Mom. He said it the way you say a word you need to soften before you can say what comes after it. The firm had restructured. That was the phrase he used. Restructured. He had been in middle management for a regional logistics company for 7 years, and the firm had restructured, and his position had been, in the language of the email they sent, eliminated. He and Brianna had a mortgage on a house in the western part of the city, a house they had stretched to afford, a house that now felt like a question mark, with 3 bedrooms and a 2-car garage. Brianna's salary from the medical billing company covered the basics. It did not cover the mortgage and the basics both. He wanted to know, and I could hear the careful construction of the question, the months he'd probably spent avoiding it, the way it came out sounding almost casual, whether there was any chance, just temporarily, just while he was looking for something new, whether there was any chance they could come and stay. Here, in this house. I said yes. Of course I said yes. He was my son. Son, I want to be precise about what I believed in that moment, because I think it matters. I believed it would be temporary. I believed it would be difficult in the small ways that sharing a house with adult children is always difficult. Different schedules, different habits, the particular friction of lives that have grown separate trying to overlap again in a shared kitchen and a shared living room. I believed we would manage it because we were family, and because the house was large enough, and because I had raised a man who I trusted to understand the difference between generosity freely given and generosity gradually converted into something else. I was wrong about the last part. Not entirely, but enough. Night they arrived on a Saturday in April with a moving truck and the children's things and Brianna's collection of kitchen equipment, the heavy Dutch ovens, the standing mixer, the set of knives in a wooden block, and a particular quality of attention that I would not understand for several months. Brianna is 40 years old. She is organized in the way that certain people are organized, not because order brings them peace, but because order gives them control. And there is a difference, though it takes time to see it clearly. She has a system for everything. She has opinions about where things belong, and she expresses those opinions with the confident fluency of someone who has never considered that someone else's opinions on the matter might exist. In those first weeks, I told myself she was simply adjusting. She was anxious. The move had been hard on her. She had given up a house she was proud of and come to live in someone else's home, and that is genuinely difficult, and I extended every grace I could find. She reorganized the pantry. I did not comment. She moved the spices from the drawer beside the stove, where they had lived for 22 years, where I could reach them without looking because my hands knew the distance, to a shelf above the refrigerator that required a step stool to access. She said it was more visually clean. I bought a step stool. She bought new cushions for the living room sofa and put Raymond's reading lamp in the garage without asking. She said the lamp didn't fit the light palette. I went to the garage that evening, and I sat beside Raymond's lamp for a while. And I did not say anything to her about it. And in the morning, I brought it to my bedroom and put it on the nightstand and did not mention it again. Small things. The kind of small things that any reasonable person would file under adjustment, accommodation, the necessary frictions of shared living. I filed them there. I kept filing them there, well past the point when the file had become something else entirely. Marcus, during this period, was largely absent in the way that men sometimes are during the management of domestic life, present in the house, present at meals, present enough to seem like a participant, but not present in the way that requires attention to detail. He did not notice the lamp. He did not notice the spices. He did not notice, or if he noticed, he did not remark upon it, when his wife began speaking to me in the particular tone that was not quite dismissive, nothing so overt that I could point to it directly, but that carried, in its careful lightness, the suggestion that I was a guest in my own house who had been there slightly too long. The children were the exception. Lily, who was 8, and her younger brother Caden, who was 5. They brought the warmth into the house that their mother had not. Lily had her grandmother's habit, my mother's habit, my habit, of watching everything very carefully before she spoke about it. She had Raymond's eyes. She had his way of sitting very still when she was thinking, as though her body understood that thinking was serious work, that deserved its own kind of space. She called me Grandma L. She came to my bedroom on weekend mornings and sat on the foot of my bed and told me things about school, about her friends, about the book she was reading, about the bird she had seen from the window that she was trying to look up in the bird guide I had given her. She was the reason I did not say anything for a very long time, because children carry the whole story forward, and I was not willing to begin a version of this story that Lily would have to carry. I kept that thought close for 11 months. It almost held. The changes accelerated slowly, then all at once, the way certain things do. By summer, Brianna had found a new job that required longer hours and more focus, she said, and the house needed better systems. She reorganized the linen closet. She established a schedule for the washing machine and posted it on the laundry room wall. Slots allocated by person, a laminated chart with a color-coded key. My slot was Tuesday mornings. I had been doing laundry in that house since before she was born, but I did not say so. I did my laundry on Tuesdays. By fall, she had established what she called a household protocol. The term arrived one evening over dinner, a dinner to which I had been invited, at which I had not been permitted to contribute food, because Brianna had a meal plan, and introducing unplanned elements disrupted the nutritional balance she was working toward. She said household protocol, and she meant rules. Rules about noise after 9, rules about the common areas, rules about, and this one she delivered with a specific kind of careful neutrality, the kitchen. The kitchen, she explained, was her domain now. She had invested in the equipment, she had established the systems, and she found it stressful. Genuinely stressful, she said, with a brief, pressed-together smile that communicated something other than stress, when the kitchen was used outside of the agreed-upon hours. There had been no agreed-upon hours. There had been Brianna establishing hours and declining to hear a response. Marcus looked at the table when she said this. He looked at the table the way he used to look at it when he was 12 and had done something he knew was wrong, and was hoping the conversation would move on before he had to speak to it directly. I looked at my son. I thought about Raymond, who would have said something quiet and absolute, who would not have raised his voice, you who would have simply made the correct thing happen. I thought about what it cost Raymond to be that kind of man, the practice of it, the daily practice of choosing the right response over the easy one. I said very quietly, "Of course, Brianna, I understand." She smiled. It was a smile that contained relief and victory, and something underneath both that I filed away without examining. That was October. In November, she changed the hardware. I came downstairs at 6:30 in the morning, as I have always done, as I did when Raymond was alive, as I did through 43 years of mornings in this house, and the kitchen door had a keypad where the knob used to be. A small black rectangle with numbered buttons mounted on my kitchen door. My kitchen, where I canned tomatoes every August. Sheet where I learned to bake bread the year Marcus started school. Where Raymond and I had our first serious argument about money and our last real conversation about what mattered. There was a sticky note on the door in Brianna's handwriting. Code is set. Ask Marcus for access times. Ask Marcus for access times. In my own kitchen. I stood in the hallway for a long moment. I was wearing my robe and my slippers, and holding the small notepad I carry to write things down in the morning. The habit of a woman who has learned that early morning is when the mind is clearest, and the decisions made there tend to hold. I stood there, and I read the note again, and I let myself feel what it actually was, which I had been declining to do for 11 months. Not hurt. Not quite hurt. Something colder and cleaner than hurt. Understanding. I understood, while standing in that hallway at 6:30 in the morning, several things simultaneously. I understood that this had been a direction all along, not a series of adjustments. I understood that the woman sleeping upstairs in my bedroom had spent 11 months gradually redefining the terms of my presence in my own house, what I could access, what I could use, where I was permitted to sit, when I was permitted to eat, and that she had done it with the particular patience of someone who understood that the most complete takeovers happen so slowly that the person being displaced doesn't recognize what they're losing until it's already gone. I understood that my son had watched this happen and had said, to me, nothing, and I understood. This was the clearest understanding of all, on the one that settled into me like water finding its level, that I had been waiting. I had been waiting for the right moment, the right trigger, the thing that would make the decision clear. I had not known I was waiting until I was standing in front of a keypad on my own kitchen door, and I knew it then. I also understood something else. Something about a building on Hartley Avenue. Something about a lease that comes up for renewal in February. I went back to my room. I sat in the chair by the window where I do my thinking, Raymond's lamp on the nightstand, throwing its particular warm light across the room, and I wrote in my notepad for a long time. Not what I was feeling. I have been feeling things for 11 months, and feeling things has not produced results. I wrote what I knew, what I had, what was possible. I should tell you about Lily. I should tell you what happened the morning after the keypad was installed, because it is the part of this story that I will carry longest. She was the first one downstairs. She comes downstairs early, like me. She has since she was small, patting down in her pajamas to find me at the kitchen table, and we would sit together in the quiet, and she would draw or read, and I would have my coffee, and neither of us needed to fill the quiet with anything. We both understood what quiet was for. She came downstairs at 7, and she found me sitting in the hallway outside the kitchen door, on the small bench that has been there since Marcus was a toddler and needed a place to sit and take off his shoes. I was sitting on that bench with my notepad, and I had my coffee, because Marcus had gone down before me, and unlocked the kitchen for what Brianna would no doubt describe as the morning window. 6:45 to 7:30, I had learned, was when the kitchen was available to me. Lily stopped when she saw the keypad. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at me. She is 8 years old. She has her father's face and Raymond's eyes, and something else that belongs entirely to herself, a quality of attention that is not yet sophisticated enough to pretend not to see things. "Grandma L," she said, "why is there a lock on your kitchen?" I said, Your mama put it there to help keep things organized. She looked at the keypad again. Then she looked at me again. But it's your kitchen, she said. Not loudly, not accusatorially. The way a child states a fact they cannot reconcile with what they're seeing. Yes, I said. It is. She came and sat beside me on the bench. She leaned her head against my arm, the way she had been doing since she was 3 years old, and she didn't say anything else for a while. And I sat there with my granddaughter's head on my arm, and my coffee going cool in my hand, and I thought about everything I had taught Marcus about what family means, and whether he had taught it forward the way I'd hoped. Eventually, she said very quietly, not looking up, "I don't like it." I put my arm around her. "I know, baby," I said. "Neither do I." And that was the moment. That was the thing that moved from abstract decision to actual intention. Not the keypad. Not the 11 months of small escalations. Not the spices above the refrigerator, or the lamp in the garage, or the laminated laundry schedule, or the tone that treated me as a managed inconvenience. It was my 8-year-old granddaughter saying I don't like it, saying it the way children say things that adults have learned not to say. And it was the understanding that if I did nothing, Lily would learn that this was what love looked like, that you endured what was done to you in your own house, because speaking was harder than silence. I was not going to let her learn that. In that evening, after dinner, a dinner I had been given 20 minutes to eat before Brianna announced the kitchen was closing, which I understood meant she wanted me out of the common areas, I went to my room and I sat by Raymond's lamp, and I opened my phone. I have a contact in my phone listed simply as Gerald. Gerald Okoye has been my attorney for 4 years, and before that, he was Raymond's attorney for 11 years. And he is a man of absolute precision and absolute discretion who communicates primarily through complete and properly punctuated sentences in a world that has largely abandoned them. He knows everything about the trust. He knows everything about the properties. He knows about Hartley Avenue. I did not call him that night. The house was not quiet enough. I needed everyone asleep. I needed the particular 2 o'clock silence that I mentioned at the beginning of this story, the silence that has weight, that presses against the walls. I needed to think first, carefully, the way Raymond would have thought about it. Because the thing about having power that other people don't know you have is that how you use it matters more than that you have it. Anyone can drop a secret. Anyone can make a phone call in anger and say, "Look what I have. Look what you've done. Look what I can do to you." That is not difficult. That is just the louder version of everything Brianna has been doing to me for 11 months, dressed differently. What Raymond taught me, what he taught me not through any lecture, but through the practice of his life, which is how the real lessons come, is that the people who hold the most are the ones who wait until the holding means something, who choose their moment not because the moment gives them power, but because the moment makes the power matter. I thought about the lease on Hartley Avenue. February renewal, 3 months away. I thought about the duplex on Alderman Street, which is currently generating a monthly income that Marcus has never seen a statement for because Marcus has never asked. I thought about this house, which Raymond and I paid off in full in 2009, which carries my name on the deed alone since Raymond's death, which has no mortgage, no encumbrance, nothing that anyone could claim or leverage or contest. And I thought about the woman sleeping in my bedroom who had installed a keypad on my kitchen door without asking, without pausing, without a single moment's consideration of whose house she was in or whose patience she had been spending. I thought about Lily, asleep down the hall in her small room, who had said, "I don't like it," in a voice that trusted me to do something about it. I sat with all of it. And then, at 2 in the morning, when the house was finally quiet in the way that houses are quiet when everyone in them believes that everything has been arranged to their satisfaction, I picked up my phone. I did not call Gerald yet. Gerald would come. Gerald's moment was not yet. What I did first, what I have always done first, in every serious situation of my adult life, because Raymond taught me this before Gerald taught me anything, is I made a list. At the top of the list, I wrote, what they know. Below that, I wrote, what they don't know. The second list was considerably longer than the first. I looked at the two lists for a long time in the lamplight. Raymond's lamp. The lamp Brianna put in the garage, and did not think to wonder why I brought it back in. Then I began to think about what comes next. What they know, I am 71 years old. I am quiet. I have been agreeable. I have not argued. I have done my laundry on Tuesdays, and eaten in my designated spot, and asked politely to be let into my own kitchen. I have not made trouble. I have, for 11 months, shown them precisely what they needed to see to believe that this would continue indefinitely. What they don't know, everything else. I closed the notepad. I set it on Raymond's nightstand beside the lamp. Outside my window, the neighborhood was dark and still. Down the hall, Lily was sleeping. In the morning, she would come downstairs and find me, and she would sit beside me on the bench or at the kitchen table if the morning window permitted, and she would lean her head against my arm. And she would trust that her grandmother was a person who knew what to do when something was wrong. I have been that person her whole life. I intend to continue. The kitchen is locked. The code is held by a woman who believes she understands the full dimensions of the situation she is in. While she sleeps, I'm going to think through every detail of what comes next. I'm going to be precise, because that is how Raymond built things that lasted. Precisely, without waste, with patience, with the particular quiet confidence of someone who has never needed to announce what they hold. Gerald's number is in my phone. February is 3 months away, and there are things I have not yet said to anyone, things that live in the trust documents, in the property records, in the carefully maintained files in the locked cabinet in my bedroom that no one has thought to ask about, that are about to change the shape of this entirely. Not tonight. Tonight I am still deciding, but I am deciding. The first call I made was not to Gerald. It was to my sister. Claudette is 74 and lives in Savannah, and has never once in her life softened a truth because the truth was inconvenient. She was the person I called when Raymond's diagnosis came in, because she was the only person I knew who would tell me exactly what I needed to hear without decorating it. She was the person I called the night after his funeral, when the house was full of covered dishes and well-meaning neighbors, and I needed 5 minutes of someone who knew me before I was a wife, before I was a mother, before I was a widow, someone who remembered Eleanor before all the roles accumulated and could speak to that woman directly. I called her at 2:15 in the morning, which she did not find unusual. Claudette keeps the hours of a person who has decided that sleep is a suggestion. I told her everything, not in the order it happened, in the order it mattered, which is different. The spices above the refrigerator, the lamp in the garage, the laundry schedule, the household protocol, the dinner I was not permitted to cook, the spot near the laundry room where my plate was set without my name being used, the keypad, Lily on the bench. Claudette was quiet for a long time after I finished. Claudette's silences are not like other people's silences. They have texture. This one had the texture of someone deciding how much of what she actually thinks to say. "Eleanor," she said finally. "I know," I said. "You have been in that house for 11 months, letting that woman—" "I know, Claudette." Another silence. "What are you going to do?" "I'm deciding." "You've decided," she said. Not a question. She knows me. "I've decided the direction," I said. "I'm working out the specifics." "Gerald?" "Yes." "The building on Hartley?" "Yes." I heard her exhale slowly. Not surprise. Claudette has known about Raymond's investments for years, has known about the trust, has understood what it meant without ever needing me to explain it in detail. What I heard in her exhale was something closer to satisfaction, the specific satisfaction of watching a chess player pick up the right piece. "How long?" she asked. "February for the lease. Other things sooner." "And Marcus?" I was quiet for a moment. The lamp threw its warm circle across the wall. Raymond's lamp, which no one had thought to wonder about. "Marcus," I said, "is going to have to decide some things." Claudette made a sound that meant she understood. You know what Raymond would say? He would say, proceed correctly. He would say, proceed correctly, and don't let anyone see you coming. I smiled in the dark. He would. Call Gerald in the morning, she said. And Eleanor, don't let her make you small. You understand? You have been letting her make you smaller every week for 11 months, and I have been watching from Savannah, and I have had to keep myself from driving up there, because I knew you were working through something, and I know you work through things in your own time. But no more smaller. You hear me? I hear you. Say it back. No more smaller. Good. A pause. Now, tell me about Lily. So I told her about Lily, about the bench and the question, and the head against my arm. And Claudette, who does not cry, who has not cried in my presence since our mother's funeral in 1994, went very quiet in a way that was different from her other silences, and I understood she was feeling something she had chosen not to name. You do this for her, Claudette said. Whatever you decide to do, you do it so she knows. I know. So she knows what a woman with her own name on things looks like when she's pushed. I know, Claudette. All right, she said. Call me after Gerald. Gerald Okwe met me at his office on a Thursday morning. His office is on the 14th floor of a building downtown, and his receptionist is a woman named Patricia, who has been with him for 20 years, and who recognized my name when I called and put me through within minutes. Gerald is 61 years old, meticulous in his dress and his language, and he has a quality that Raymond trusted above all else in professional dealings. He does not waste words, and he does not perform concern he does not feel. He felt concern. I could see it in the way he read through the notes I had prepared. 3 pages, handwritten, organized chronologically, and then again by category. The changes to the house, the restrictions on my movement within it, the keypad, the tone of daily interactions, the pattern of escalation. He read all 3 pages without speaking. Then he set them down and looked at me over his glasses. Mrs. Simmons, he said, this is your home. It is. The deed is in your name. It is. And your son and his wife are residing there with your permission, which you have not formally withdrawn. I have not. Not yet. He was quiet for a moment, the way Gerald is quiet when he is arranging the relevant facts into their correct sequence. Tell me what you want to happen, he said. Not the steps. The outcome. What does this look like when it's resolved correctly? I had thought about this for 3 days. I had written it and crossed it out and rewritten it in my notepad beside Raymond's lamp. What I wanted was not complicated, but I wanted to say it correctly. I want my house back, I said, on my terms. I want my son to understand what has happened, not from me telling him, but from seeing it clearly in a context where he cannot look away from it. And I want his wife to understand something she does not currently believe, which is that the position she is in depends entirely on a person she has been treating as though she has no position at all. Gerald nodded slowly. He picked up his pen. And the Hartley Avenue property? The lease renewal is in February. I would like to understand all of my options before that date. You have complete discretion over the lease terms, he said. As the property owner, you can renew, renegotiate, or decline to renew. You can alter the terms. You can, within proper notice periods, elect not to continue the tenancy. I understand that. What I want to know is the correct sequence. What should happen first, second, third, so that when it arrives in the right order. Gerald set down his pen and looked at me with an expression I had not seen on him before. It was not quite admiration. Gerald is too precise for admiration, but something adjacent to it. A recognition of approach. Raymond taught you that, he said. Raymond demonstrated it, I said. I paid attention. He picked up his pen again. Then let's talk about sequence. We were in his office for 2.5 hours. I will not tell you everything that was discussed, because some of it is not yet complete, and because the specifics are less important than the shape of what emerged from them. What I can tell you is that I left Gerald Okoy's office on a Thursday afternoon with a folder of documents, a clear understanding of what I needed to do and when, and the particular quality of calm that comes from having moved from feeling a thing to deciding a thing. Those are different states. I have learned not to confuse them. I also left with a piece of information I had not previously confirmed, which Gerald provided by pulling up public records while we sat there. The medical billing company where Brianna works, not just the company, but Brianna's specific position, her employment record, the lease the company holds for their office space, had renewed their current agreement 14 months ago for a 2-year term, which meant that in 10 months, they would be looking at the same conversation I was preparing to have with Gerald. In 10 months, the person who would be on the other side of that conversation would be the property manager for a trust held by Eleanor Mae Simmons. Brianna had been going to work in my building for 4 years without knowing it. I sat with that for a moment in Gerald's office. I sat with the specific shape of it, how long she had been doing that, how many mornings she had driven there and parked and walked through those doors and sat at her desk and organized other people's accounts, never once thinking to ask whose name made all of it possible. I thought about the keypad on my kitchen door. I thought about your spot, delivered without eye contact. Gerald, I said, can I ask you something that isn't directly legal? He waited. Do you think it matters? Does it change the nature of the thing? If she finds out before or after the lease comes up? He considered this for a moment. Legally, no. The timing of her discovery doesn't affect your rights. But you're not asking me a legal question. No? Then I'll say this. He folded his hands on the desk. Raymond always believed that the moment of understanding should be earned, that a person should arrive at the truth through the logical consequence of their own actions, not because someone handed it to them. He thought that was the only version that actually landed. He did believe that. Then I think you already know the answer to your question. I did. I came home that Thursday afternoon to find Lily sitting at the bottom of the stairs in her school uniform, backpack still on, reading a book. She looked up when I came in. Where did you go, Grandma Elle? I had some business to take care of, baby. She looked at me for a moment with Raymond's eyes. Did it go okay? It went very well. She seemed satisfied by this and went back to her book. I went to the kitchen door. The access window was 4 to 6 on weekday afternoons, I had been informed, and I punched in the code Marcus had given me, and I made myself a cup of tea. While the kettle heated, I looked around my kitchen and I named quietly, in my head, each thing in it that I had put there. The pot rack Raymond installed the Christmas, he decided I needed more counter space. The window above the sink that I had planted a small herb garden in the box beneath for 20 years. The floor tiles Marcus had helped me pick out when he was 16 and thought he had opinions about everything, including grout color, every surface, every corner. Every object in the room either belonged to me or had been placed here by someone I had chosen to trust. I made my tea. I went to my bedroom. I sat by Raymond's lamp with my notepad, and I began to move. The first invisible move was the simplest. I called the property management company that handles the Hartley Avenue building, and I introduced myself as the trust holder, as the owner of record, as the person they should be directing certain conversations to going forward. The company already knew me, of course. Gerald had set up the management relationship years ago, but the day-to-day was handled without my involvement, which was how Raymond had structured it, and which was how I had allowed it to continue. I was now re-involving myself, quietly, with specific instructions regarding the February renewal process and several questions about the current tenants that I wanted answered in writing. This call took 11 minutes. No one in the house knew it happened. The second invisible move was slightly more involved. I contacted a real estate attorney, not Gerald, a different one, recommended by Gerald for a specific purpose, to review the options around the Alderman Street property, which I was considering restructuring in certain ways. This also took less time than you might expect, because Raymond had kept everything clean, and clean things are easy to work with. Neither of these moves would be visible for some time. That was the point. You do not show someone what you're building while you're building it. You show them when it's built. The third move was different in nature. I asked Marcus to have dinner with me. Not a family dinner, just the two of us. I told him I wanted to talk. He came to me that evening, looking the way he had been looking for several months. A man moving carefully around the edges of a thing he cannot quite name, aware that something is wrong, but having successfully convinced himself that awareness is not the same as obligation. We sat at the small table in the laundry room because the kitchen was in its closing window, and I looked at my son, 43 years old, Raymond's jaw, my eyes, the child I had worked every shift for and never begrudged a day of it. And I chose my words the way Raymond would have chosen them. "Marcus," I said, "tell me what you see when you look at this situation." He was quiet for a moment. "Mom." Not a deflection. "I want to hear what you actually see." He looked down at the table, then back at me. He had the grace to not perform confusion. "Things have been hard," he said. The adjustment," I said quietly, "has included a keypad on my kitchen door. It has included a designated eating spot near the laundry. It has included your wife informing me, in this house, what hours I am permitted to access rooms I have been accessing for 43 years. He was quiet. "I am not raising my voice," I said. "I am not crying. I am telling you what I see, and I am asking you what you see." A long silence. The refrigerator hummed. Down the hall, I could hear Lily's television, the quiet murmur of whatever she was watching before bed. "I should have said something," he said, quietly, almost to himself. "Yes," I agreed. "You should have." Another silence. "Are you going to ask us to leave?" I looked at my son. I thought about the sequence. I thought about what Gerald had said, that the understanding should be earned, should arrive through the logical consequence of actions, not because someone handed it over. "Not tonight," I said. He looked up. "But Marcus," I said, "I need you to pay attention to what's happening in this house, to what your wife is doing, to what you have been choosing not to see." I paused. "I need you to pay attention because something is going to become clear in the next few months, and when it does, I want you to have already understood what led there. I don't want it to be a surprise to you." He looked at me for a long moment, with an expression I had not seen on him since he was a boy. Open, slightly frightened, aware that he was being given something important. "What's going to become clear?" "Pay attention," I said again, "and you'll see it." I stood up. I folded my napkin. I said goodnight to my son, and I went to my room, and I sat by Raymond's lamp, and I wrote in my notepad for a long time. December passed. I want to be precise about what December looked like, because I think the texture of it matters. Not the large things, but the small ones. The daily fabric of it, because that is where this kind of story actually lives. I did my laundry on Tuesdays. I accessed the kitchen within the designated windows, with the code that Marcus had provided. And I made my tea and my occasional meals, and I sat at my small table near the laundry, and I did not comment on any of it. I said good morning and good evening. I participated in the surface of the household life, with the patient cooperation of someone who has no grievances. Brianna, during this period, grew incrementally more comfortable. This is a pattern I had observed in my 11 months of watching her. When there was no resistance, she expanded. Not aggressively, not with any apparent awareness of doing it. It was simply the nature of her movement through a space. If no boundary was asserted, she assumed there was none. She added a second keypad, this one on the door to the basement, where Raymond's tools were kept, and where I had stored certain boxes of our things. She said it was for safety. The children should not have access to tools, she explained, as though I had not been managing the safety of children in this house for 30 years. I made a note of the date and the specific wording she used. She moved Raymond's anniversary photograph, the one from our 40th that lived on the mantel, to a shelf in my bedroom behind a closed door. She replaced it with a piece of decorative art she had ordered from somewhere, a print of a city I had never been to in colors I would not have chosen. She mentioned to Marcus that the living room was starting to feel more unified. I made a note. Marcus, true to what I had asked of him, was paying attention. I could see it. See the quality of his attention shifting, the way he looked at his wife sometimes when she spoke, the way he looked at me afterward, as though he was doing arithmetic he hadn't known he needed to do. He did not say anything, but he was watching. And Lily, he who watches everything with Raymond's eyes and doesn't yet know how to pretend she hasn't seen it. Lily came to my room one Saturday morning in December, and she said, while she was looking at the space on the mantel where the photograph had been, "Grandma L, where's the picture of you and Grandpa Raymond?" "Your mama moved it to my room," I said. "It's safe." Lily looked at the city print for a long moment. Then she said, precisely, "I liked the other one better." "So did I, baby." She turned and looked at me. "Are you sad?" "No," I said. And I meant it. I was not sad. I was the clearest I had been in years. The way a thing becomes clear when all the fog that has been softening its edges finally lifts, and you see the exact shape of it. Lily nodded, apparently satisfied. She came and sat beside me and opened her book. And I had my coffee, and neither of us needed to say anything more. January arrived the way January does, gray and sharp and stripping everything down to its essentials. I am telling you about January because January is when Brianna made her next move, and when Marcus finally said something, and when things began their shift from what they had been to what they were becoming. The move Brianna made was this. She told Marcus, and Marcus told me over breakfast in the laundry room, that she had been speaking to a financial advisor. She and Marcus had been considering their long-term stability, he said. Their housing situation was uncertain, meaning they could not plan a future around a house they did not own. The advisor had suggested that solidifying their housing situation should be a priority. He said this to me carefully, looking at his coffee. I said, "What does solidifying mean?" He said, "Brianna thinks it might make sense for the house to be in joint names." I sat with that for a moment. Joint names. My house. The house Raymond and I paid off in full in 2009. The house with my name on the deed alone. Has she spoken to an attorney about this? I asked. She mentioned it to someone, yes. What did they tell her? That it would require your consent. I nodded. I looked at my coffee. I thought about Brianna in some attorney's office asking about my house, and that attorney explaining that my consent was required, and Brianna returning home to a man she had spent 11 months training into a particular kind of passivity and believing that the consent was something that could be managed. "Marcus," I said, do you want this house to be in your name?" He was quiet for a long time. I watched him sit with the question. Really sit with it, which I think was the first time he had been asked to do that directly. "I want stability," he said finally. "I want Brianna to feel secure." "That's not what I asked." Another silence. "No," he said quietly. I mean, it's your house, Mom. Yours and Dad's. He stopped. Started again. "Brianna thinks it would help us." "What do you think?" He looked up at me. His eyes, my eyes, the ones I gave him, were tired and a little bit ashamed, the eyes of a man who has been allowing someone else's certainty to substitute for his own. "I think," he said slowly, "that I don't know how we got here." I reached across the small table, and I put my hand over my son's hand. Not in anger, not in forgiveness. That was a different conversation, for a different time. In the specific tenderness of a mother for a child she raised, who grew into something she didn't entirely recognize, and who she believes can find his way back. "I know," I said. "I'm going to help you understand." He looked at me. "What are you going to do?" I removed my hand. I finished my coffee. I stood up and I looked at my son, and I thought about Raymond, and about the way Raymond had taught me that the people who hold the most are the ones who wait until the holding means something. February, I said. Pay attention in February. He stared at me. Mom, pay attention, I said, and trust your mother. I want to tell you something about the particular experience of holding knowledge that other people don't have. I want to tell you this because I think it is misunderstood. People imagine it feels like power. And in a certain sense, it does. There is clarity in it, there is direction. But that is not the primary experience. The primary experience is responsibility. Because when you know something that other people don't, you are also the only person in the room who can see the full shape of what is coming. And that requires you to be precise, to be correct, to ensure that what arrives when it arrives is the exactly appropriate consequence of what preceded it, not more, not less, not distorted by anger or haste, or the very human desire to simply let someone know, right now, what you hold. Raymond held the knowledge of his investments for years without mentioning them, not out of secrecy, out of the understanding that certain things should stand on their own when the time comes, not be announced in advance. I had been Raymond's student for 44 years. February was 18 days away. Gerald had sent me documents to review. I reviewed them. The property management company had sent me the preliminary paperwork regarding the Hartley Avenue renewal discussions with the current tenants. I read it carefully. The medical billing company, Brianna's company, had indicated their intention to renew at the current rate. Standard response. Entirely reasonable from their perspective. They had not yet been informed that the renewal process would be handled differently this cycle. They had not yet been informed that the property owner would be directly involved in the discussions. They would be informed in 10 days. I sat with the paperwork at my bedroom desk, the desk that used to be in the study before Brianna converted the study into a home office for herself, the desk that I had moved to my room without comment. And I signed the authorization that allowed Gerald to proceed with the next step. I sealed the envelope. I thought about Brianna downstairs, at this very moment, in my kitchen, which was hers now in her understanding of things, hers in the way that everything in this house had gradually become hers in her understanding of things. Cooking in my pots on my stove in the kitchen she had locked, planning the transfer of a house that had never been available for transfer. Meeting with financial advisors about a future that was being built on a foundation she had not thought to verify. I thought about the morning she would drive to work, the morning she would walk into the building on Hartley Avenue, the morning she would sit at her desk and her phone would ring, or an email would arrive, or the property manager would stop in to discuss the renewal, and the name she would hear would reach her the way that certain names do, not immediately, but in a slow wave, as the connection forms between a thing you thought was separate and a thing that is closer than you ever imagined. I thought about Marcus, who had been paying attention, who was sitting with the arithmetic of 11 months and beginning to understand what it added to. I thought about Lily, who had said I don't like it with Raymond's eyes and her own particular brand of undecorated truth. I put my hand on the envelope. Raymond, I thought, you built correctly. You built so that this moment would be possible. I am proceeding correctly. I am not letting anyone see me coming. I am almost ready. The call came on a Tuesday. Not the call I made. The call Brianna received. I was not in the room when it happened. I did not need to be. I had spent 11 months learning how this house carries sound, which walls are thin, which hallways funnel conversation, which silences between sentences travel farther than the sentences themselves. I was in my bedroom, at Raymond's desk, reading, when I heard her voice change. That is the only way I know to describe it. Her voice changed. Not loudly. Brianna does not do things loudly, which is perhaps the quality I understood best about her, because I had recognized it as a mirror of my own restraint and had been wrong about what it reflected. See, but a voice under sudden pressure sounds different from a voice in the ordinary run of things, and I had spent enough time in proximity to her voice to hear the difference. I heard her say, "I'm sorry, can you repeat the name?" And then a silence. And then, "Eleanor Simmons." I turned a page of my book, which I was no longer reading. Let me tell you what Gerald had arranged, because the sequence of it matters. The property management company contacted the medical billing company on a Tuesday morning. I had specified Tuesday, for reasons that are mine, to introduce a change in the renewal process. The owner of the Hartley Avenue property, they explained, would be directly involved in the upcoming lease discussions. Standard communication, routine in tone, specific in implication. The owner of record for the property, they said, was a trust administered on behalf of Eleanor Mae Simmons. The contact at the medical billing company who received this call was the office manager. Brianna had been office manager for 4 years. She had signed the last lease renewal herself on behalf of the company 14 months ago. She had the document in her files. She had the property address memorized. She drove there every morning. The name Eleanor Mae Simmons was to her mother-in-law, the woman in the back bedroom, the woman with the designated eating spot near the laundry, the woman whose kitchen she had locked. I do not know the precise sequence of her understanding in those first minutes. I know only what I heard, the changed voice, the repeated name, the silence that followed. I know that after the call ended, she did not come to my room. I know that she called Marcus because I heard his phone ring in the hallway and heard him step outside to take it, which he did not usually do. I went back to my book. I was not ready to have the conversation yet. The conversation required the full shape to be visible, and the full shape was not yet visible. Brianna had learned one thing. There were others. I waited. Marcus came to my room that evening. He knocked, which he had started doing again in January. Knocking, which he had not done in the months when the house had felt, I think, more like Brianna's management project than his mother's home. The knock was a small thing, but I had noticed it, the way I notice small things, the way I have been noticing small things for 71 years. I said, "Come in." He sat in the chair across from my desk. He looked the way a man looks when the arithmetic he has been doing for weeks has suddenly produced an answer he didn't expect. Not devastated, not angry. Something quieter and more serious than either of those. The expression of a person who has arrived at a truth and is standing in front of it, making himself look at it directly. "Mom," he said. "Marcus. You own the building where Brianna works." "The trust does, yes. Your father established it. Gerald manages it." He was quiet for a moment. "She called me. She was—" He stopped. "She didn't know." "No," I said. "She didn't." "Did you? Did you know that when she got that job?" "I knew where she worked, yes. The property management company sends me quarterly reports. Her company's name appears on the tenant list." He stared at me. "You've known for 4 years." "Yes." A long silence. The lamp threw its warm light. Marcus looked at it. Raymond's lamp, which had been in the garage for 3 weeks before I brought it back. And I saw the moment he recognized it, saw the small flinch. "She put this in the garage," he said. "She said it didn't fit the light palette." He looked at it for another moment. Then he looked at me. "Mom, I'm sorry." "I know you are." "I should have." "You should have," I agreed. "Several things, several times. We can talk about all of those, but that's not the conversation for right now." "What is the conversation for right now?" I folded my hands on the desk. I thought about how Raymond would do this. With precision, without theater, saying exactly what needed to be said and nothing that didn't. "I want to tell you some things," I said, "about what your father built, about what I've been managing since he died, about the shape of things that you have been living alongside for 4 years without knowing the full dimensions." He nodded. "And after I tell you, I want you to make some decisions. Not tonight. Not under pressure. I want you to sit with what I tell you and make decisions that are actually yours, not ones that are made for you and handed to you and called a plan." He flinched at that. He knew what I meant. "Okay," he said, so I told him. Well, I told him about the trust, about the properties Raymond had assembled over decades. Quietly, correctly, without announcement. She about the duplex on Alderman Street that had been generating rental income for 12 years. About the commercial building on Hartley Avenue with its 3 tenants, one of whom had been paying rent to a trust bearing my name for 4 years without knowing it. I told him about the value, not the exact figures, but enough for him to understand the scale of what Raymond had built and what I had been tending since Raymond's death, and what had been sitting beneath the surface of every conversation in this house since the day Brianna moved in and began to treat it as an asset available for repositioning. I told him about Gerald, and about the conversations Gerald and I had been having since December, and about the decisions that were currently in motion. I told him about February and the lease renewal, and what my options were, all of which were significant, and none of which required his input, because the properties were mine, the decisions were mine, the name on the documents was mine. I told him these things the way you tell someone a truth they needed to know, directly, without softening, but also without cruelty, because Marcus is my son, and I raised him, and the fact that he had allowed himself to become someone who looked at his laundry room table while his wife assigned his mother a designated eating spot does not erase 43 years of who he was before that. It complicates it. It requires accountability, but it does not erase it. When I finished, he sat for a long time without speaking. "Dad built all of this," he said finally. "Your father was a precise and patient man," I said. "He built it the way he built everything, correctly, high without waste, with the long view in mind. And you've been managing it. For 4 years, quietly, the way he would have wanted." Marcus looked at the lamp again. I watched him sit with everything, the trust, the properties, the specific irony of Hartley Avenue, the keypad on the kitchen door, all of it arranged in front of him in its true proportions. I watched the arithmetic become complete. "She doesn't know all of it," he said. "She only knows about the building." "Correct? She doesn't know about the house, the deed." "She knows what she learned when she spoke to that attorney in January about joint ownership," I said, "which is that my consent would be required." "She thought she could manage that." I did not respond to that directly. "She thought she understood the situation she was in," I said. "People make decisions based on what they know. She was working with incomplete information." He looked at me. "You've been letting her work with incomplete information." "I've been letting events proceed in their correct sequence," I said, "which is different." Another silence. "What happens now?" he asked. "That depends on some decisions," I said. "Some of which are yours, some of which are Brianna's, and some of which are entirely mine." "What are yours?" "The lease renewal is mine," I said. "What I do with Alderman Street is mine. What I do with this house, the deed, the terms of your living here, everything related to the property itself, is mine. Those decisions don't require your participation, though some of them will affect you." He nodded. He was not arguing. I think he had spent enough weeks paying attention to understand that argument was not the appropriate response. "What's mine?" he asked. "Your marriage," I said quietly. "What you do with the information you now have. Whether you are willing to look clearly at what has been happening in this house and have an honest conversation with your wife about it. Whether you want to rebuild something here, with me, with the children, on terms that are actually honest. Those are yours. And Brianna's?" I looked at my son. "Brianna is going to have to understand something that she has not understood. I'm going to help her understand it. But how she responds to understanding it, that's hers." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Are you going to let us stay?" I thought about Lily, about the bench and the question and the head against my arm, about "I don't like it delivered without decoration." "I'm going to let you stay," I said, "on terms that I am going to state clearly, not in a household protocol posted on a wall, stated directly, between adults, with full understanding on all sides of what this house is and whose name is on it." "Okay," he said. He stood up. He looked at his father's lamp for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said again. "For all of it. For watching it happen, and not—" "Marcus." I said his name the way I said it when he was 12, and needed to stop apologizing and start correcting. "I know. We'll talk more. Go home to your family." He nodded. He left. I sat for a long time at Raymond's desk, in Raymond's lamp's light. Proceed correctly, I thought. Don't let anyone see you coming. I still had one move left to make. Brianna came to my room the next morning. She knocked. That was new. In 11 months, Brianna had not knocked on my bedroom door. She had sent Marcus with messages. She had posted laminated schedules. She had made announcements at dinner about household protocols. She had not knocked. She was wearing work clothes. She was due at the office in 40 minutes. I said, "Come in." She stood in the doorway for a moment, and I saw her take in the room. The desk, the files, the lamp. The lamp. I watched her eyes stop on it, and I watched the arithmetic begin. "I wanted to talk to you," she said. "Come in," I said again. "Sit down." She sat in the chair where Marcus had sat. She was composed. Brianna is always composed. It is the thing I have respected most about her, even in the months when I was watching her use that composure to take apart my household piece by piece. She is not someone who unravels. She reorganizes. "I received a call from a property management company yesterday," she said. "I know." A pause. "You arranged it." "I authorized them to contact the tenants directly about the renewal process." "Yes." She looked at me. "You own the building where I work." "The trust does. Raymond established the trust. I administer it." Another pause. Longer this time. Brianna, who manages the space between sentences the way she manages everything, was doing something I had not seen her do in 11 months. She was sitting with something she didn't know how to organize. "I've worked there for 4 years," she said. "Yes." "I didn't know." "No," I said. "You didn't." She was quiet for a moment. I let the quiet be. I had learned to let quiet be what it was, without filling it. Another thing Raymond taught me. "Is there more?" she asked. It was a precise question. Under the circumstances, it was the most intelligent question she could have asked. I recognized it as such. "Yes," I said. "There is more." I told her about the duplex on Alderman Street. I told her about the other holdings in the trust, in general terms. I told her what Gerald had told me, the valuation, the scope, the degree to which Raymond had built correctly over decades, and the degree to which what he had built had continued to grow in the 4 years since his death. I told her the house was paid off, that it had been paid off since 2009, that the deed carried my name alone, that it was at no point in the 11 months of her residence here, been in any danger of being transferred, leveraged, or repositioned, because the person whose consent would be required for any of those things had never had any intention of providing that consent. I told her that the code on my kitchen door keypad, which she had installed without asking me, could be removed at my request by any locksmith, at any time. I told her that the photograph from Raymond's and my 40th anniversary was in my bedroom behind a closed door, and that the city print in the living room could come down today if I chose, and that I had not chosen to remove it because I had been waiting for this conversation. I told her all of this the way I had told Marcus, directly, without cruelty, but without softening. Not because I was angry. I had moved past the kind of energy that requires anger. I was in the particular clear space on the other side of it, the space where you can see the full shape of a thing and speak to it accurately and without distortion. She listened to all of it without interrupting. This is also something I had respected about her, even in the worst of the 11 months. She is a listener when the information is important enough. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "I didn't know," she said finally. "I understand that. I thought—" She stopped, started again. "The situation felt precarious. Marcus wasn't working. We had no security. I thought—" Another stop. "I thought if we could establish ourselves here, if the house could be something we could rely on, I understand what you thought, I said. I want to be clear about that. I understand the anxiety behind it. I understand that you were afraid. What I want you to understand is that anxiety and the fear that comes with it does not authorize the things you did in this house. She looked at me. You locked my kitchen, I said. In my house. You gave me a designated eating spot near the laundry as though I were a visitor on probation. You removed my husband's photograph from his own mantel. You treated the person who opened this house to you as a problem to be managed, rather than a person to be respected. I paused. These are things you did. The anxiety behind them is real, and it deserves acknowledgement. But the things themselves are also real. Both of those can be true. Brianna's composure held, but only just. I could see what was happening beneath it. The reorganization. The working through. The particular processing of a person who manages by systems encountering a situation that no system had prepared her for. What happens now? She asked. Marcus's question. Now, I said, we make a new arrangement, a clear one, with everything visible. You're letting us stay? I am offering you the opportunity to stay, I said, on terms that I am going to state once, clearly, and that will not be renegotiated. She waited. This is my home, I said. It has my name on the deed, and it has Raymond's history in every room, and it has my 43 years of living in it. And those facts are not organizational problems to be managed. They are the foundation of everything else that happens here. You live in my home as my son's family, with my permission. And that permission requires that you treat me as the person whose home this is. I paused. The keypads come off, I said. The access windows end. The household protocols end. The designated spots end. My kitchen is my kitchen, and my living room is my living room, and my husband's photograph goes back on the mantel today. I looked at her steadily. In exchange, you and Marcus and the children continue to have a home here, at no cost, while Marcus re-establishes himself. I will not insert myself into your marriage or your daily choices. I will be a grandmother to Lily and Caden, and a mother to Marcus, and I will be civil and warm and present in the ways that matter. But I will not be managed in my own house again. Brianna sat with this. I watched her sit with it, the full shape of what she was hearing, what it meant, what it cost her, and what it gave her. Because there was something it gave her, and I needed her to understand that too. Because the thing about power that other people don't know you have is that when you choose to extend grace with it instead of simply wielding it, the grace means something. It means something different than grace extended from weakness. The Hartley Avenue lease, she said, quiet, precise. Is mine to decide? I said, and I haven't decided. She looked at me, understanding what that meant. Not a threat, but a reality. An open question, a decision that sat in my hands, not hers. I would like the chance to, she started. February, I said. We'll talk about it in February, after we see what this new arrangement looks like. She understood what I was saying. A probationary grace, a conditional extension. The particular kind of offer that requires the recipient to demonstrate something before the full terms are settled. She nodded. She stood up. She looked around my room. The desk, the files, the lamp. One more time. I underestimated you, she said. It was the most honest thing she had said to me in 11 months. Yes, I said. You did. She left for work. I sat for a moment in the quiet. Then I got up, and I went to the living room, and I took the city print off the mantel, and I put Raymond's photograph back in its place. Our 40th anniversary. Raymond with his arm around me, both of us squinting a little into the sun, both of us younger than I remember feeling. I stood and looked at it for a long time. Then I went to the kitchen, and I punched in the code for the last time, and I propped the door open, and I made myself a proper breakfast, and I sat at the kitchen table that Raymond had bought in 1987, and I ate it in my own kitchen, in my own house, at any time I chose. Marcus removed the keypads that afternoon. Both of them. He did it without Brianna asking, and without me asking. He did it on his own, which was the most important thing about it. He found me afterward in the garden, where I had been tending the roses Raymond planted along the fence, and he stood there for a moment, looking at me in the particular way a man looks when he is trying to find the right beginning for something. "Dad would be proud," he said finally. I thought about Raymond, about the trust, the properties, the clean lines of everything he had built, about the lamp he would have understood I needed to keep, and the photograph he would have known I needed back on the mantel, about the patience he had practiced every day of his life and tried to pass forward. "He would say we're proceeding correctly," I said. Marcus smiled. Small, tired, real. "Yeah," he said. He would. February came with a particular cold clarity. Gerald and I met the Tuesday before the renewal deadline. The weather was sharp, and the office was warm, and Patricia brought coffee without being asked, which she had started doing on my visits, which I appreciated. Gerald had prepared 2 documents. He placed them in front of me on his desk. The first was a standard lease renewal for the medical billing company at Hartley Avenue. At current rates, for a 2-year term. Everything the same as before. The second was a letter, addressed to the company, signed by me as administrator of the trust, informing them that the owner of record had chosen not to renew the lease at current terms and was offering a revised arrangement with modified rates and conditions. Gerald looked at me over his glasses. "Which one?" he asked. I sat with both of them. I thought about Brianna in January, the Brianna who had been managing her anxiety by locking my kitchen and assigning my eating spot and believing that what she was doing was simply organizing a difficult situation. I thought about the Brianna who had sat in the chair in my bedroom and said I underestimated you with something that was not quite remorse, but was close to its beginning. I thought about the 6 weeks since that morning, the open kitchen, the photograph on the mantel, the dinners where I had been asked, if I wanted to contribute something, and had cooked the pot roast recipe my mother gave me, and watched Lily eat 3 portions and ask for the recipe to put in her special notebook. I thought about Marcus, who had started coming to my room in the evenings again. Not every evening, but some. Sitting in Raymond's chair and talking, sometimes about nothing, sometimes about everything, sometimes about his father in the way adult children circle back to their parents when they are finally ready to receive what was always there. I thought about Lily, who had come to my room the previous Saturday and sat on the foot of my bed and said, without preamble, "Grandma L, hi, are things better now?" And I had said yes, and she had nodded in the serious way she has, Raymond's way, and gone back to her book. I looked at the 2 documents. I thought about Raymond, who had taught me that power is not measured by how hard you use it, but by how correctly. I picked up the first document. I signed it. Gerald allowed himself a small, precise smile. "Standard renewal," he said. "For now," I said, with the understanding that next cycle, we revisit the terms with full transparency. "I'll note that in the file." "Please do." I capped my pen. I set it down on his desk. I looked out his 14th floor window at the city in its February cold, sharp, clear, every edge visible. "Gerald," I said, "Raymond built a good thing?" "He did," Gerald said. "You've tended it well. I'm going to keep tending it." "I know." I put on my coat. I gathered my things. I thought about driving home, to my house, with my name on the deed, with Raymond's photograph on the mantel, and his lamp on the nightstand, and his roses coming up again along the fence in a few months, the way they always did, because he had planted them to come back. What I want to tell you, before I close this, what I want you to take with you from this story, is something about the difference between patience and diminishment. I was patient for 11 months. I have been patient for longer than that, for decades of a life that required patience in ways that were invisible to almost everyone around me, the way women's patience usually is. invisible, and relied upon, and converted into an assumption, the assumption that it would continue, that it was bottomless, that the woman who had always absorbed things without comment would continue to absorb things without comment until there was nothing left of her that wasn't someone else's management project. That assumption was wrong. The patience was not weakness. The patience was the particular intelligence of someone who understands that the full shape of a thing must be allowed to reveal itself before you respond to it, who understands that a response made in the middle of the shape, before all the dimensions are clear, is rarely the correct response. Raymond taught me this. His whole life was a demonstration of this. I waited until the shape was complete, until I could see every edge of it, every dimension, every implication, until I had the full truth in my hands, not just the truth of what was being done to me, but the truth of what I held, what was possible, what the correct sequence of events was. And then I moved. Not loudly, not with theater, with precision. One phone call to Gerald, one call to a property management company, one conversation with my son, one morning in a bedroom chair, with a woman who had underestimated me, speaking clearly and without cruelty about what was real. That was all it took. Because the thing about holding something real, something with your name on it, built over decades, tended carefully, never announced, is that when the moment comes, it doesn't need to be dramatic. The weight of it speaks for itself. And it is spring now. The roses Raymond planted are beginning. I have my kitchen back. I have my table, where I sit in the mornings with my coffee and my notepad, sometimes with Lily beside me, sometimes alone in the good quiet that belongs to a person who is at home in her own house. The photograph is on the mantel. Raymond's lamp is on the nightstand. The city print is gone. Brianna put it in storage without comment, and I did not thank her for it, because it was the correct thing to do, and correct things do not require acknowledgement so much as simple doing. Marcus has a new position. He started in March, project management for a firm that saw what Raymond always saw in him, which is a person with his father's precision and his mother's patience when he remembers to use them. He is rebuilding. It is not fast and it is not seamless, but it is real, which is what rebuilding requires. See, Brianna and I are not what I would call close. We are something more interesting than close. We are honest with each other. The performing is gone. The careful management of appearances is gone. What is left is two people who have seen each other clearly and are choosing, each morning, to build something workable from that. It is not warm yet, but it is honest, and I have found in my 71 years that honesty is the better foundation. She asked me, last week, about the Alderman Street duplex. Carefully, with genuine curiosity rather than calculation, or at least with a version of curiosity that was trying to be genuine, which is perhaps all any of us can offer at the beginning of something new. I told her about it, about Raymond choosing it, about the family that has been there 6 years, and whose children I send birthday cards to because Raymond believed you knew your tenants as people. She listened the way she had listened in my bedroom, seriously, without interrupting. He built a lot, she said. He built correctly, I said. There's a difference. She thought about that. Will you teach Marcus about managing it? I've started, I said. She nodded. Good. It was a small conversation, but small conversations, when they are honest, accumulate into something. Lily came to my room this morning. Saturday. She had her book and her bird guide, and the particular purposefulness of a child who knows exactly where she is going and why. She climbed up on the foot of my bed, and she opened her book, and she looked at me once with Raymond's eyes, and then she went back to reading, because we do not require explanations between us. I had my coffee. Raymond's lamp was on. The morning was quiet in the way I like mornings to be, full, not empty, full of the particular warmth of a house that knows whose it is. I thought about my sister Claudette, who I call every Sunday now, who said no more smaller and meant it, who will drive up from Savannah in April and sit in my kitchen and drink my coffee and say I told you in the particular way that only sisters can. I thought about Raymond, who is in the photograph on the mantel, and in the roses coming up along the fence, and in the lamp, and in the trust, and in the particular quality of patience I carry, which he demonstrated for 44 years, and which I have been practicing ever since. I thought about what it means to hold something real, to know its dimensions, hunt to tend it correctly. And then Lily looked up from her book, and she said, completely out of nowhere, the way children say things, "Grandma L, you're different now." I looked at her. Different how? She thought about it with the seriousness she brings to everything. Like, before you were kind of waiting for something, and now you're not. I looked at my granddaughter, 8 years old, Raymond's eyes, her own particular brand of undecorated truth. You're right, I said. I was waiting. What were you waiting for? I thought about the keypad on the kitchen door, the correct sequence, Gerald's office, the documents on his desk, one signature on one piece of paper, the weight of it. For the right moment, I said. She nodded, apparently satisfied, and went back to her book. I finished my coffee. Outside in Raymond's garden, the roses were beginning. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. The people who finish the whole story are the ones who understand it, and the ones who share it. If this one moved you, the next video on your screen is waiting to do the same. And if you haven't subscribed yet, come back. There's always another woman the world underestimated, and we tell those stories here.